In Victorian mansions, luxury wasn't the problem. Survival was. From the outside, these Victorian mansions looked like paradise. But inside, they hid a deadly reality no one dared to speak about. What if I told you the most beautiful homes of the 19th century were also some of the most dangerous places to live? She walked into a grand Victorian mansion filled with beauty, wealth, and elegance. But what she didn't know was, people were dying inside. Elegant on the outside, deadly on the inside. This is the dark truth about Victorian mansions. Imagine standing at the iron gate of a great English manor house, somewhere in the autumn of 1872. The gas lamps have just been lit along the gravel drive. Amber light flickers behind leaded glass windows, throwing warm shadows across ivy-covered stone. Somewhere inside, a piano is playing, Chopin perhaps, drifting out through the heavy drapes. Smoke curls from 6 chimneys. The smell of roasting meat hangs in the cold evening air. A footman in white gloves stands at the door. From the outside, it looks like paradise. But step inside. Walk past the polished mahogany. Follow the corridor past the drawing room and the dining hall, past the portraits of ancestors in heavy gilt frames. Walk down the stairs, the other stairs, the back stairs, the ones the family never uses, into the basement kitchen, where a girl of 13 is hauling a coal scuttle at 6 in the morning with blistered hands. Follow the pipes behind the wainscoting, thick with lead. Breathe in the coal dust, the arsenic green wallpaper, the slow seep of gas from a faulty fitting no one has yet repaired. Now you are beginning to see the Victorian mansion for what it truly was. Before we go further into this story, I want to take a brief moment to speak directly to you. Yes, you, watching right now. These historical narratives take an enormous amount of research, care, and time to bring to life. If you find value in stories like this one, stories that peel back the beautiful surface of history to reveal the human truth beneath, please consider subscribing, hitting that notification bell, and sharing this video with someone who loves history. Every subscriber helps this community grow and keeps these stories alive. Now, back to Victorian England, where things are about to get very dark indeed. The Victorian era spans, roughly, the reign of Queen Victoria, 1837 to 1901. 64 years during which Britain transformed itself into the most powerful industrial nation the world had ever seen. It was an era of extraordinary contradictions. Britain controlled a quarter of the Earth's surface. British engineers built railways across continents, strung telegraph cables under oceans, and constructed the Crystal Palace, a cathedral of iron and glass, to display the wonders of industrial civilization to an astonished world. Charles Dickens was writing, Darwin was thinking, Florence Nightingale was nursing, and yet, in the very houses where this civilization celebrated itself, people were being slowly killed by their own furniture, by their wallpaper, by their medicine, by the architecture of elegance that surrounded them every waking and sleeping hour. This is that story. To understand the Victorian house, you have to first understand what the Victorians believed a house was. To the Victorian middle and upper classes, the home was not merely a place to sleep and eat. It was a moral statement, a spiritual fortress. The great Victorian social critic John Ruskin described the home as the place of peace, the shelter not only from all injury, but from all terror, doubt, and division. The philosopher John Stuart Mill wrote of the home as the center of civic virtue. The Victorians believed, with an almost religious intensity, that the condition of a household reflected the spiritual and moral condition of its inhabitants. This belief had a profound practical consequence. Keeping up appearances was not vanity, it was a duty. The Victorian middle-class family, the prosperous merchant, the solicitor, the factory owner, spent a staggering proportion of their income on the look of the home, on wallpaper with elaborate patterns, on upholstered furniture in deep jewel tones, on carpets so thick you could lose a coin in them, on curtains of heavy velvet that pooled on the floor, on parlors crammed with ornaments, framed embroidery, wax fruit under glass domes, stuffed birds under taxidermy cases, china dogs, brass candlesticks, lacquered boxes, and framed photographs arranged on every available surface. The Victorian parlor was, in effect, a monument to consumption. And as we shall see, consumption, in more than one sense of the word, was precisely what it delivered. Let us begin with the wallpaper. In 1858, a chemist named Wilhelm Skay examined samples of wallpaper collected from houses across England. What he found alarmed him deeply. A large proportion of them, particularly those in fashionable shades of emerald green, lime green, and a vibrant bluish green called Scheele's green, contained significant quantities of arsenic. Arsenic had been used as a pigment in wallpaper since the early 19th century. The compound copper arsenite, also known as Scheele's green, after the Swedish chemist Carl Wilhelm Scheele, who first synthesized it in 1775, produced a color of extraordinary brilliance and saturation. It was cheaper than organic dyes, it was color-fast, and it was beautiful. By the 1850s and 1860s, it was everywhere. It colored the wallpaper in bedrooms and nurseries. It was mixed into paints. It was used to dye fabric for curtains, for upholstery, for the artificial flowers that decorated ladies' ball gowns, for the green baize of gambling tables, for the green paper used to wrap sweets. The problem, the deadly, slow, invisible problem, was what happened when the wallpaper got damp. Victorian houses were damp. Without modern insulation or damp-proof courses, moisture seeped into walls from ground level. Condensation formed behind heavy drapes. Coal fires, while warming the rooms, produced considerable moisture when they burned. And when arsenic-laden wallpaper became damp, a mold called Scopulariopsis brevicalis began to grow. As it digested the arsenic compounds in the paper, it produced trimethylarsine, a volatile, garlic-smelling gas that diffused silently into the air of the room. The symptoms of chronic arsenic poisoning are insidious. They do not announce themselves dramatically. Instead, they creep in. Persistent headaches, unusual fatigue, nausea that comes and goes, a cough that will not resolve, numbness in the hands and feet. The skin sometimes develops a peculiar patchy discoloration, patches of dark pigmentation interspersed with pale, almost ivory-colored spots. The hair may begin to fall out. The nails develop curious white lines. The nervous system deteriorates gradually, leading to confusion, weakness, and eventually, in severe cases, paralysis and death. The tragedy was that these symptoms could easily be attributed to a dozen other causes. Influenza, rheumatism, the weakness of a delicate constitution, bad air from the garden, an imbalance of the humors. Victorian medicine, for all its growing sophistication, was poorly equipped to identify chronic, low-level poisoning as the cause of what appeared to be a collection of unrelated, common complaints. And so families, particularly children, who slept in rooms papered in cheerful nursery greens and spent hours indoors, absorbed arsenic day after day, month after month, breathing in the slow poison of their beautiful walls. It is estimated that by the 1870s, approximately 50 to 70% of all wallpaper sold in Britain contained some quantity of arsenic. William Morris, the great Victorian designer, poet, and social reformer, whose firm produced some of the era's most celebrated and widely copied wallpaper patterns, used arsenic-based pigments extensively throughout the 1860s and 1870s. When confronted with the scientific evidence, he was initially dismissive. The dangers, he wrote, were grossly exaggerated by ignorant persons. The fact that his own family home, Kelmscott Manor, was papered throughout with his arsenic green designs did not seem to trouble him unduly. Others were less sanguine. Dr. William Hines, a physician practicing in London in the 1870s, published a detailed account of a family in his care who had suffered mysterious, recurring ill health for 2 years after moving into a newly papered house. The children had persistent nausea. The mother suffered from severe headaches and a burning sensation in the throat. The father experienced numbness in his extremities. When Hines removed a sample of the bedroom wallpaper and had it tested, it was found to contain substantial quantities of arsenic. The family moved out. Their symptoms resolved. The house stood empty for years, beautiful and poisonous, its cheerful green-patterned walls still pristine. If the walls were dangerous, the light was hardly safer. For the first half of the Victorian era, the primary sources of artificial light were candles and oil lamps. Both had their hazards, fire chief among them, in a world of wooden floors, linen drapes, and voluminous silk skirts that swept the ground. Fires were astonishingly common. The crinoline, the vast hooped petticoat that fashionable women wore throughout the 1850s and 1860s, was a particular menace. The stiff cage of steel hoops and petticoats could spread up to 6 feet in diameter, and in a room with an open hearth, the danger was not theoretical. Between 1863 and 1864, the British Medical Journal reported that nearly 3,000 women died from crinoline-related fire accidents in England alone, though this figure has been disputed by later historians who suggest it may be too high. Nevertheless, the frequency of such accidents was startling enough that The Lancet published warnings. Newspaper columns fretted about it, and some women began fastening their crinolines to the wall with pins when they sat close to a fire. Then came gas lighting. By the 1840s, gas was piped into the streets of most major British cities, and by the 1860s and 1870s, domestic gas lighting was a fixture, in every sense, of prosperous middle-class households. Gas chandeliers, gas wall brackets, gas table lamps, they filled Victorian rooms with a brighter, steadier light than anything candles or oil could provide. Gas lighting was a symbol of modernity and comfort. It was also dangerous in ways that were poorly understood. Victorian gas fittings were neither uniform nor reliably sealed. Joints could work loose. Rubber tubing perished. Poorly installed burners leaked, and the gas itself, coal gas, produced by heating coal in the absence of air, was rich in carbon monoxide. A slow leak from a gas fitting in a sealed bedroom was not merely unpleasant, it was potentially fatal. Carbon monoxide poisoning does not smell. It produces no immediate sensation of discomfort. Its early symptoms, drowsiness, dull headache, slight confusion, are so easily attributed to fatigue or general malaise that they may pass unnoticed entirely. Victorian physicians documented numerous cases of families who awoke feeling inexplicably unwell, of servants found dead in rooms where a gas fitting had leaked overnight, of children who seemed inexplicably sickly in houses where the gas pipes ran through the walls of their rooms. Beyond leaks, the simple act of burning gas depleted oxygen from a sealed room. Victorian rooms were often tightly sealed, heavy curtains, well-fitted doors, in an effort to keep out drafts. The same Victorians who feared fresh night air as a source of disease were creating indoor environments where the air was slowly degraded by the combustion of open flames. Carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and other products of combustion accumulated in closed rooms over the course of an evening's entertainment, leaving guests feeling dull and headachy in a way that was simply attributed to the excitement of socializing.